Hello. Welcome to West Virginia and Commonplace. Today I have a very special guest. I have author Margret O'Connor. Margret O'Connor has a book, Scandal in the Shadows, The Original Priest, Mother Mary. Now, Miss O'Connor, would you please tell the audience about yourself so that they can have a little background to go on for this book?
Sure, JR. I have a Master's of Science from the University of Buffalo, a Master's of Arts in Pastoral Ministry from Christ the King Seminary in East Aurora, New York. I was a former chaplain, and now I'm a Eucharistic minister. And I just want to thank you very much for having me on your show today. Unfortunately, many people feel that this might be a controversial subject, but I just want to assure your listeners that what I'm saying is the truth. And it comes from biblical research, which is pretty neat because, you think you pretty much know a particular subject area. And then after biblical research happens, many times a new truth comes from that. And the title of my book is Scandal in the Shadows, The Original Priest, Mary Mother. And the word scandal can also mean omission. So it's basically the Catholic Church hierarchy has omitted parts of the original church's history and not really acknowledging, yes, there were not only women priests, but there were women bishops and women deacons. And if anyone is familiar with the Catholic Church, from the time you're little, you've been told there definitely were never any woman priest. But what happened out of this research, which really excited me, was Mary, Mother of God, Jesus's mother, she actually was a woman priest. She was called Mary Priest, and her title was the model of all priesthood in the Catholic Church. So priests would actually be praying to Mary.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it astounded me, but the controversy unfortunately comes in with so many people have obviously only heard one side, that there absolutely were never any woman priests. And then, as I say, you get into the biblical research, and we've got women bishops. I mean, this blew my mind really when I first discovered it.
Okay, let me ask you a question real quick then. So, in this biblical research, all right, I'm an avid reader of every all walks of religion, spirituality books, and everything like that. Was this information derived from the Torah, the King James version? Like, where did you get this research? Where did you find this? What source material did you have?
Okay, I read several different books that were written by Catholic priests, woman Catholic religious, as well as other, ministers from other faith denominations. And John Winsgard, he himself was a former priest. And he actually, in his book, The Ordination of Woman in the Catholic Church, has a whole chapter on Mary Priest. And I'll tell you, JR, when I read it, I was just so excited, but I really had to do a double take. Wait a minute. Did I just see on the page what I read? But it just brings your whole faith life. If you're a woman, it's so exciting because this was the one avenue, your own spirituality, that it was basically stopped, that you knew if you were a Catholic woman, well, if you had aspirations to be a woman priest, obviously that was going nowhere. You would actually have to be a member of another, faith denomination, which
Correct.
does allow woman priests. But when you think of it, it's like a whole religious heritage that was taken away. And what do I mean by that? Let me just give you a quick example.
Okay.
Being Irish, there always were, well, before the priest shortage, there was families. Say Christopher was a priest, maybe Sean was a bishop. Well,
Okay.
obviously, if you were a young boy, you always had a role model as a priest. But if you were a girl, well, there were no women priests. And I remember my mother bought my brother Paul a cardboard replica of a regular church altar. So Paul was the priest, and my twin sister Pat and myself, we acted like the parishioners. Well, of course, there came a certain point where we wanted to take over the role as priest. And Paul was saying, "No, you can't be priest. That's a man's role. You have to be a man." So that was my like earliest introduction, realizing there was that disparity there.
So here goes my question for you. So that obviously right there, you answered the question I was going to ask you. That's what kind of probably inspired you to look into this more. But what point in your adulthood did you start asking more questions about why there aren't any female priests?
Well, actually, through the years, I heard people talking. There were women priests, but I hadn't really gotten into, checking out further, like research, reading. But I was very interested in it. And then in the 80s, there's a Catholic sister, Joan Chittister. This lady is a live wire. She could direct the Pope
Oh, wow.
what he should be doing. But no, she's really a brilliant woman. But she was talking about women priests, and of course that piqued up my curiosity, obviously, on the subject. And then when I finally found that this fact was truth indeed, I really had to wrestle with the fact that I had been lied to by all people, my own church. In other words, any woman in the Catholic Church, they have been lied to. There's this betrayal of their own trust. So I had to decide, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay resigned right in this awful feeling that, I've been lied to? Or is there any way, some way I could bring change? But then it hit me. I'm obviously just one person out of millions of Catholics, and I don't care if we're talking about right here in the US, but what about worldwide? What about in Australia? What about in Ireland? Wherever you go in Europe. These Catholics have absolutely no idea that this other side of Mary exists. This whole other like hidden history, it lies within the shadows of our Catholic Church history. And as well, there are the, people think of, oh, gee, church history, that's got to be real dry or boring. But I guess that depends on the skeletons that you find in that church's closets. And I personally find it very offending that the Catholic Church actually took away that title of Mary Priest. They took away any devotion to her back between, say, 1926, 1927. And I mean, that's fairly recent in 2,000 years of church history.
Right.
So John Winchgard's even brought up the fact, why is this so? Well, he did mention it could be a coincidence that at that same year there were other women from different faith religions that were aspiring to be woman priests. So, I mean, you can just, you don't want to make assumptions, but you can pretty well surmise that if this information is buried, well, then this issue of woman priests isn't even an issue. And that's how it's basically gone down through the centuries. Rome is not being bombarded by the paparazzi. I mean, the press asking them, well, why? Well, there never were women priests, so who's going to be asking them? But I think any woman in the Catholic Church deserves, at minimal, at least the truth.
And I understand that. I wholeheartedly agree because, like you said, that's odd. I mean, not odd, but it's really unraveling. It kind of would just rock your soul to know, like you said, a whole bit of history just omitted, like just erased, covered up. Like it's a mass cover up, and that would just, as I'm not a woman, but as a person, to know that there's a bit of history that could empower me and could have me doing more than what I believe I can do. Um, that would be that would make me feel really bitter towards my religion, because it would make me think that there's someone at the top that really made it a point to be very chauvinistic about all this. Because like you said, the time frame that you gave out, that's still modern history. You know what I mean?
Yes, and it's very interesting that you just mentioned about, that certain point that you might think, men that, they're making all the decisions. If you look further into this, the Pope has his own commission, and is called the Pontifical Biblical Commission. And here again, real recent, back in 1976, they did a study, and this commission of the popes came out, and they said there's basically no reason why a woman can't be ordained. And yet, what did they do with this information? They've sat on it. Okay, let's go back 2 years before then. Let's go back to 74. There was another commission that was looking into the issue of women as deacons in the history of the Catholic Church. And there's these 3 Greek studies that were all real early in the church history. They were all in agreement that, yes, there were woman deaconesses. And they mentioned whether it was the man that was going to be a deacon or a woman, they were both on the altar. They were in the presence of the bishop. The bishop would lay hands over them. He would, officiate in prayers.
Yes.
And a stole would be placed around each of their necks. And as well, each of them would be given the cup, the chalice to drink from. So my question is, that came out, this commission's findings in 1974. Why did Pope Francis, our present Pope, why did he in 2016 have to start a brand new commission on this same subject matter? And miraculously, this didn't go anywhere. And now what I hear is they're going to convene another commission, but unfortunately, the people on this commission are more of the status quo. So obviously that's going to probably stall out. But seriously, I call, who are these so-called men of God when they can't even follow their own commission's findings? And let's go back even further into the Bible. They have just completely ignored Jesus's own words on women's equality. Whether it's in Galatians 3:28, there is no man or woman, all are one in Christ Jesus, or back in Genesis 1:27, that in the divine image, God created them, woman and men. So they're not even following Jesus's words towards equality. They haven't followed their own commissions. And then there was it was called Vatican II, and it was basically a commission looking into the church to try to modernize the church. And there was a real informative Pope then, John the 23rd. And he basically said in so many words, let's open up the windows of the church. Let's see the signs of the times. So I can remember that. And there was real hope. There was excitement, things were going to change for the better, and not to take away from the tradition, but to see how we could, improve on that. And that's a big thing right away, that people say, oh, especially Rome, we can't have women priests today because we would have to change the tradition. Yet, JR, it was the early church fathers that changed that tradition when they removed women from their early positions as women priests, women bishops, women deacons, and they were very creative in how they did that. The law, the church law, not Jesus's law, the man-made law is called canon law. And what they did was they explicitly said that women were no longer allowed to be up on the altar. So, I mean, obviously that could put the kibosh on everything. You know, they couldn't be on the altar. It's unreal. I mean, as a woman, when you go back, and to me, this is all very calculated because they understand what Jesus said. They understand what their commissions have said. Vatican II went even further. There was an Article 29 in the Constitution on the Church in the modern world, and it regarded the laity. That's the like average everyday Catholic that would, you know, sit out in the pews when you go to church. And they said basically they wanted to eliminate any type of discrimination in the church. Well, hello. I mean, if they would have done that, they would have like opened the doors for a woman. And that was ignored. So it's like, to me, it's very calculating, it's very deliberate, and it's very sad that these so-called men of God, you know, can't do what they should be doing.
Right. And the thing there is like, it seemed like it just like the male intuition took over. And just, it seemed like someone in that period of time that you're talking about just decided, like, that's crazy that someone decided that, hey, this history doesn't matter. Like, that's the real thing that I get out of this, like, that really bothers me. Like, someone actually decided at some point in actual modern history, you know, that this doesn't need to exist. We need to put a blanket over this, and we need to take any factual evidence that they deem that's factual and erase it from history. Like, I don't understand how, like you said, being a religion, how someone could just decide to take away an identity. You know, that's almost like taking a life away, you know, with all that. So here's my question for you. As you started researching this, did the more that you found out, did this move you away from the church, or did it make you stronger in the church to keep seeking out the truth?
The latter of what you just said. I am definitely after the truth because nothing will take me away from Jesus Christ. What upsets me is that these people that are supposed to be representing Jesus, their ministry does not fall in line with that. They've been deliberately covering up things. There's been lying, there's been deceit. And you actually, you know, I wondered at one point, well, where did all this nonsense start against women? And if you go way back, back in the time of Rome, of course, they owned everything. They were in charge of everything. So they had their own law. And the civil law against women wasn't the best then because most women didn't have money. They didn't have the capital. So they were seen as nothing. Well, believe it or not, some of the Latin church fathers over in Italy, they adopted, John Wingard said, this early Roman law, and they shaped it in a sense into their church law. So if you have law to begin with, which is very derogatory and is against women, and then you bring it into the church, well, you can imagine the theologians, they've already got 3 or 4 strikes already against women. And you go back with the early canon law lawyers, it's just unreal. They looked at women not only as sinners, as women that were unequal in society, but they were unclean. They took a woman's monthly cycle, and to them that was something very grotesque, very unclean. So that, in a sense, was another reason why women should not be allowed to be up on the altar. And if there was some type of big storm, if you could have a woman's menstrual blood, if you could have the lightning hit that would stop the storm. If a dog went by it, that would make him mad. Crops outside would wither. If you even had silver inside, your silverware would tarnish. Your mirrors would crack. I mean, it was totally. Then there were other canon law lawyers in the Middle Ages, and they were calling women any conceivable name, not just prostitutes and harlots, she-wolves and night wolves and whatever else.
A lot of blasphemy.
Yes. I mean, it was just total insanity. But we can laugh about that. But here we are today in 2020, and woman, as far as their equality in the Catholic Church goes, it's not even on the radar of the hierarchy of the church.
Yeah, like there, like you said, to me, it seems like there's never been any point of, there's nothing that evolved or came out of any of these studies, like you told me. And it's kind of like the issue, like you said, I hate to use this term, it's actually taboo, you know? Yeah, it's taboo. Like, I mean, actually, you addressing it to me today is the first time it's ever been brought to my attention, because inside society, you know, and I'm just, when I say society, I'm just doing a broad generalization audience, because I always have to go back to the audience and let them know that it's a generalization. Most people, when you think of female priest, deaconess, and all that other stuff, you look inside every other religion to a degree. I'm not going to say every single one, but we'll just use Christianity. It's not taboo. It's actually, you know, I'm not going to say it's equal, but I want to say that it's not looked bad upon. You know, there's no true. Well, I'll take that back. I'll say this: there may be a negative connotation to it, but it's accepted, and it's a reality that there are women priests. You know, inside Christianity.
And it's like, unfortunately, the Catholic Church, it's like we're back in the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, as far as, you know, their thinking on that. And I do want to make a point to your younger generation. This is the time we need your voices. Nothing is going to change in the church unless the laity, that's myself, that's any other Catholic, the younger people, boy, do we need your voices, because back, say, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, there was a thing called pray and obey, this term in the Catholic Church.
Okay.
And like, I grew up in the 50s, so you just didn't, if you wanted to ask something of your pastor, well, who were you? Did you have a degree in theology? You just knew that you didn't ask him, let alone ask what Rome was doing, why they were doing it. And I really seriously feel there has been this like generational divide in apathy, in not asking questions, just accepting what is. And I as well pick it not only for women priests, but against the priest sexual abuse issue. And not all, but so many of the older generation, what are you doing? You're destroying the church. Why are you questioning the hierarchy? And this one woman, I basically told her, I said, what is wrong with me speaking up for children that can't defend themselves against being raped? And then like she sort of stepped back. It's just that I think really there's just this apathy that you don't question the church. Well, of course, anyone that's in 20s, 30s, they know they should be questioning the church. And in fact, I think anyone that questions, I don't care if you're Catholic, Protestant, whatever faith life, you know, you belong to, that your faith grows. And, you know, you should have every right to do that. And I do want Catholics to know that out of Vatican II and that regarding the laity, that any Catholic has the right to speak out on issues of importance. And as I said before, the only way anything is going to change is we have to get this word out. I'm trying to basically have initiate a conversation, not only here in the U.S., but worldwide, to let average day Catholics know you have to get out there and you have to make Rome finally accountable for what they're doing. Well, in this case, actually what they aren't doing. I mean, they're in the driver's seat. They don't have to change anything. No one's banging down their door. But for the people, younger generation of the Catholic Church, I know you want change. You want authenticity. You want realness. Yes, please come out. And I do have a petition on my website. And I ask anyone, you don't have to be, Catholic. If you believe women in 2020 should have equal equality within the Catholic Church, or you think it's a disgrace the way the hierarchy took away Mary, Mother of God's title. And I forgot to mention how they did it. This was really underhanded. Who are these men, or what universe were they coming from? Basically, this official from Rome is talking to some newspaper person that ran what they wanted, saying about they were removing devotion to Mary. But the way they referred to Mary, it is well the way you handled this article, or it is well the way it's like Mary is some type of an innate object. They're talking about Jesus's mother. And I'll just never understand, where they were coming from. But I do have specific points, and really it's your conscience. If you see something there and I think, gee, maybe, yeah, I agree with that, I would really appreciate if you could sign that petition, because then that will be going to Rome. But I am looking for big numbers here, because Rome will not do anything until we really get those numbers up.
Okay, so let me ask you a question real quick. How can the audience get to your website? Can you explain it to them? Is there
Sure.
Are there any other social media links that they can reach out to you? Because this is a really interesting topic. The thing that's really, and I hate to put this kind of a commercialism to it, the thing that's attractive about it is, like you said, it's an actual reform that nobody's doing. It's, to me, it's kind of like how different groups of people tried to get rights here and there, and they were unheard for years, and then at some point they were heard. This right here, you're just, I'm not saying you're the only person, but you're right now starting a movement that, like you said, needs a little bit more momentum. Obviously, that's what you're doing with it. But it's crazy that, go ahead.
We need the new blood of the younger generation of Catholics. And a podcast host, Matt Napple, he said to me, yeah. Margaret, are you David going against Goliath? And I said, yes, I'm little David going against the Catholic Church. And boy, I can feel the enormity of that, the weight of that. But anyone that would, like to find that petition, or, go over to my website, it's yourradicaltruth.com. That's yourradicaltruth.com. And I am also offering a free chapter that they can just click on. There'll be a thing that they'll see there on the page if they'd like to read a chapter of my book. And I am on Amazon. And
okay, yeah.
I also have Facebook, Your Radical Truth, you'll find on Facebook.
Okay, so are you moving in the realm of, because, in social media, are you moving in the realm of having an Instagram page to go along with it also?
I am not, maybe it's because I grew up in the 50s and 60s. I am not tech savvy. And in fact, I have a lady that does the social media aspect of this. So right now, I'm staying within my confines of the Facebook. And
Okay, well, here's the thing, though. I'm going to tell you this, and I always I tell certain people this. I don't tell everybody this. You have a knack for what you're doing. I think a positive thing that you can do for society is to produce your own podcast. What stopped you from producing your own podcast?
well, again, I would have to learn how to, whatever you do with the sound system, like some people go through it and they like edit it and they take out if there's sounds, if there's noise. And then I think there would be the worry every week of, are you going to actually be able to get a guest on that really is going to, that you would be proud to have on your show for your audience.
Well, let me spin it around a different way. There's quite a few different type of podcasts. What you have is informational. So your podcast could be singular. Yours, like with everything that you have, you could get out a continuous amount of knowledge to people where you wouldn't necessarily have to ever have a guest.
Huh. I didn't think of it from that perspective.
Because imagine this. Everything that you said on this podcast was very informative. The audience will get it. But what if it was something that you continued, maybe if you just took took some time, if you have it, you could record 8 15-minute shows and then periodically put them out every week. Different aspects of what you're saying. I think that would be very informative for an audience also, because you do a podcast and it gets out there, and podcasts, people continuously listen. But if you were continuously getting this message out through that medium right there would, I believe personally, would help gain you a bigger audience too, along with going to your website and stuff. You could tie so much stuff in together that I think that it would push your not your agenda, but would push this issue right here through the glass ceiling.
Oh, thank you. I do also have blogs at the website if anyone's interested, to see some of my articles.
Okay. So we'll do this real quick. There's a young lady, and she's Catholic. We're going with a scenario real quick here. Where does she start to find these truths once again? Where can someone young find this truth and go from there with it? I understand coming to your website and seeing that, but you're probably like me. There's something physical beyond a book. Like, where could a young person or young lady start out on this quest to get all this knowledge herself?
Okay, I can tell you in the back of my book, I have an extensive addendum. And it's not only all the books that, I researched, there are all other books on the subject matter. There's the latest videos, but more importantly, what they could do to start out with is go over, there's different church organizations. There's call to action. Just Google call to action.
Okay.
Or Google future church, women's ordination committee, Roman Catholic woman priest. And you're probably thinking, what am I talking about? Believe it or not, there are Roman Catholic women priests. What happened was back in 2002 on the Danube River, there was a Catholic bishop that ordained women who wanted to be either priests or bishops. So according to the Catholic Church theology, there's something known as the apostolic tradition. Basically, it's a linkage. If you're ordained by a bishop, then there's that linkage that goes all the way back to Paul. So now we have actual woman priest, not actual women bishops that have been ordained by this bishop. That obviously this was out on a boat because it had to be so hush hush, because obviously we know if his name ever came up, I mean, he would be removed from the Catholic Church. There's a Father Roy Bourgeois, and back in 2011, he spoke out again for Catholic women priests, and he even had a friend of his who was a lady that became ordained by this group, Catholic Women Priests, and he basically went to her ordination, and that was basically the last straw for the Catholic Church hierarchy. But you can, go online and look under Roy Bourgeois. I mean, he speaks from the heart. You want things like that are going to move you. So I think really any Catholic woman, especially the younger generation, call to action. They even have a separate division, and it is specifically for the younger generation in their 30s.
Okay.
And there's plenty of opportunities there.
Okay. And Margret O'Connor, I want to thank you very much for coming on the show and being so informative, and like your message, like it moves me because, like I said, a hidden truth, something just like swept under, like history. This is crazy. Like there's a whole part of history, and it's a whole thought pattern that's missing. It's something that's not programmed. It's like, and I'm not trying to be very elementary, but for my audience, imagine it's like this. It's like waking up every day and not knowing that you can eat breakfast and you just have lunch.
Yes.
Yeah. And I hate to do it that way. It's like never knowing that breakfast had all these things about it that were true, like that there were eggs and bacon. And I'm just using this because it makes simple sense. Not knowing that there's Canadian bacon, not knowing that there's bagels, not knowing that there's orange juice and all this other stuff that is hidden inside of breakfast. All these attributes, all this history, rich history there. You just don't know. You just go through life and just, there's nothing to do in the morning. We go straight to lunch. There's no what's the word am I looking for?
There's no variety.
Yeah, there's no variety, and then there's no it's just no fortitude to push someone to actually think about women priests at all. Someone has they have made factory Catholics, in a sense, you'd say, to be programmed almost like an android, not to even question the status quo, like you said. And it looks like when someone did do that, were they? That's one thing I wanted to ask. Were they excommunicated? Was anybody ever excommunicated if they, as we say in the South, went against the grain? If they went against,
yes, this Father Roy Bourgeois, he's no longer a Catholic priest because he spoke out openly for women priests, and that's a whole other thing for women priests. The hierarchy. If you ever listen to them very carefully, if they're talking about that issue, they bring in, those women want those positions because they want the power, or they'll sneak in the word feminism. They give like some type of an evil or not the best connotation, like to stir up the pot, to take like the focus off what women want to become priests because of their own spirituality. They're receiving that same call that any young man receives. And they have every right, according to what Jesus has said, according to what the Pope's own commission has found, Vatican councils have said, and it's time that the Catholic Church hierarchy tell the truth to the everyday Catholic. And remember, to the listeners, I am only the messenger.
That right there, like I said, I'm glad that you came on the show and brought this message.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And in closing, I would like to ask you, to please give a shout out to anybody that helped you with this research, because I know like that this like seems like this is mind boggling. It almost puts me in the frame of a movie. I could see you with boards stuck up here and there. I'm trying to think it was a Tom Hanks movie that I was thinking of that could kind of go along with this, but the Da Vinci Code.
Oh yes.
Yeah, I kind of feel like you could have put together a movie, but kind of. I'm not saying it's the same scenario, but a major cover up with thing, and obviously you said like throwing just different things out there to take your mind off of it, distractions, diversions, and simple diversions that would be like, oh, we can put a stop to this because it seems like this, and it's not that at all. So, could you please like let the audience know, like, just a shout out or a thank you to anybody that helped you along the way with this? If not, was this like something solely you did on your own, or?
No, I definitely like to give a shout out to my cousin Karen Overhoff for she listened. I would basically read the whole book to her every morning. We talk at 7 a.m. and she would get like not the whole chapter, but it'd go on and on and on because I wanted to get feedback. How is she taking what I've read? Does it make sense? Are you excited? Because that's one thing. I wanted to make this a hands-on book. So, Catholics and anyone that really wants to see the Catholic Church like they've never seen it before, to have a better grip on that. But also, I'd like to thank my late cousin Dave Hayes, his wife, Gail. She does my editing when I write blogs. So these two are just, I can't say enough for them, how they've helped in this process.
Okay. And once again, I want to thank you for coming on West Virginia Uncommonplace. And I hope in the near future that we can do a part 2 to this. Because
that'd be neat.
Yeah, because I see like that there's more that we can go into about this. So I'll always extend that offer to you. If you have time to come back, I would greatly appreciate it. And once again, thank you for being a West. All right, thank you for being a West Virginia Commonplace.